This episode is brought to you by Instant Impact. Instant Impact provides transformative talent solutions to small and mid-sized companies that are making between 30 and 500 hires each year. If your recruitment's giving you a headache and you don't know where to start, then give the team at Instant Impact a call or visit www.instant-impact.com for more information.
Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About HR. I'm your host, Louise Fraser, and today we're diving into something that's been sparking loads of conversation lately, the idea of seeing people as a product. My guest, Kelly Tucker, is the founder and managing director of HR Star, a consultancy that helps founders build people-first cultures that actually make a difference, not just on paper, but in how people show up every day. Kelly has spent her career helping businesses realize that when you invest in your people, the impact hits far beyond engagement scores. It shapes performance, purpose, and retention. So we're going to chat about why engagement is still the secret sauce for growth and what people as a product really looks like in action and how organizations can do better when it comes to supporting maternity care and working parents as well. So Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Louise. It's great to be here.
Amazing. So I'm going to kick off with the big question first. What sparked your interest in treating people strategy like a product?
Oh, okay. So HR Star, my consultancy, is 10 years old. And prior to that, I'd worked in various HR roles over a sort of 15-year period, starting as a HR administrator. Well, it was actually called personnel. That's showing my age in the industry, and worked my way up to a sort of strategic HR lead. And whilst I had a seat at the table, sort of on paper, I still very much felt that big decisions that impacted people were made without my input, and I was then asked to go and implement them. And I just felt that wasn't the right way to do it, that HR was still very much seen in the organizations that I worked in as this function you wear like when you want to hire and fire or people are not performing. And sort of when I did my CIPD management research support, I did it on the psychological contract between employer and employee. And that just made so much sense to me in terms of it's a relationship. It should be a two-way exchange. And so that sort of sparked in me that employee engagement was the key to business success, that your people need to be motivated and engaged to be productive. And if they're productive, therefore your business will be successful. So that was where HR Star was born and why I started HR Star to do HR differently, in that I wanted to really partner with organizations and work with them, look at each stage of that employee life cycle and looking at how it could be the best it possibly could be to ensure, like I said, that people were engaged. That would lead then to less poor performance, high employee churn, high absence, etc., and ultimately business success. And then in more recent time, I read Jessica Swan's book around people as a product, and it just made so much sense. It was like, yes, this is exactly how we do HR with our clients at HR Star, because culture isn't a one and done. Employee engagement isn't something you just work on every now and then. It's a continual thing that has to happen to get the most out of it. So when we look at people as a product, we're looking at it, I suppose, as similar to how subscription models work. So when we think about Amazon, Netflix, etc., where you subscribe to something, you buy into something to get something in return. And if you perceive that you're getting continual value, you will continually subscribe to that. So when we look at it as people as a product, your employees will come into the organization and they're, in a sense, subscribing to that organization. And in return, we'll get from that relationship, hopefully, good reward and recognition, training and development, their well-being taken into consideration, career opportunities. And if that's continued being provided, then they're going to continue subscribing. And so it is this continual review within, what we do with our clients to look at, are we delivering on expectation? Are we getting back in return, on that return in our investment as well? And just this process of continually looking at how we can deliver to our people so that they deliver for us.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm also, a big believer that, culture is created and engagement is created in that part in between what's necessary for the business and what people are, feeling. And so having the end user in mind, the employee, when you're creating anything it makes complete sense, right? And involving the end user in the creation of strategy, how you look after your people, engagement, all of those things are going to have a bigger impact than some of this top-down stuff that we might have seen previously before. And there's lots of change happening, right? Consistent change from a geopolitical landscape perspective. And we have to prime team members to be able to be open and flexible to change, and involving them in the process is the best way to do that. So I'm a big fan of of the principles. However, I am also aware that, whilst some of us future facing HR ops leaders and consultants are very hot on this topic, it can be harder to explain that to senior leadership. So how do you go about explaining the concept of people as a product to skeptical leaders?
I'm very lucky that the clients we work with at HR Star are really sort of people focused and understand that link between their people and their business performance. But yeah, in terms of how we do you sort of talk about those things, I think as you just touched on there, the world is continually changing. I think COVID really highlighted to us the impact like that, something like that can have, and the need then for good people processes, like good people in your business, etc. So for me, there's sort of elements of that when I'm talking to potential clients or trying to explain this to people. There are the day-to-day HR operations, if we want to call it, that need to happen. So we need to make sure that people have got their contracts of employment, that we've got our policies and procedures. Of course, they are the foundations, those brilliant basics that we need to have in place to make sure that we are compliant and those baselines are met. And then when I talk to people about those sort of people as a product, I think it's about understanding how businesses change and people change, and as a business, ultimately you want to be successful, and probably the biggest line on your P&L is your people, it's your payroll. So you're going to spend a lot of money and resource and time in people. So we need to invest in that to make sure we're getting a return on our investment and the best out of that. As a business, you will have business goals and business, targets, etc. So we have to think about, as a business, what are we trying to achieve and how are we then going to get our people to help us achieve that. And that needs to be continually reviewed, because as businesses go through change, so from startup, scale up, etc., what we need is going to change as well from our people. And I think it's also looking at, we're now working with, a real mix of people, different generations in the workplace. What people want and need from work is continually changing. When we just think about how and what we go through as individuals, that changes. So what I wanted from work when I started my career has changed over time when I then became a mother, when I've then got other commitments, or I need different things from work. So it's continually changing. So we need to continually change as employers and as HR professionals to ensure that we're meeting the expectations of our people, but also getting still what we need from our business. So when we're thinking of people as a product and a subscription model, it's that continually looking at what is changing for our people, what is changing for our business, and getting those things aligned. And, we do that by getting feedback and sort of doing regular reviews or feedback sessions, doing regular reviews of the business, and always looking at what needs to change to keep up with the pace of change that we're seeing in this world.
Yeah. I think you touched on a few pieces that I'm definitely keen to come back on a little bit later around the multi-generational workforce, big topic. And I think feedback, it certainly comes to mind when you think about people as a product, right? You have a roadmap, you consistently iterate, you find ways to generate feedback. And I wonder if there are any frameworks or ways that you have found work to consistently drive levels of feedback within the organizations that you're working with. I know it's something that other HR leaders are probably, battling with on a consistent basis, trying to get that regular feedback rhythm working.
Yeah, I think that's a really key point, isn't it? That feedback you say loop is so important because we need to make sure that what we're delivering is what the people need and want, and it's also getting the desired result. And the only way to know that, excuse me, is feedback. And we've seen, haven't we, like surveying, etc. So how we sort of do that with our clients at HR Star is when we first start working with a client and we go in, we'll do what we call a People Insights project. And that's where we'll go and actually have face-to-face conversations with individuals, ideally on a one-to-one basis. And that's just for us to really understand from the people, what is it that you really enjoy about working there? What is it that you need and want? Are those needs and wants being met? What are your challenges? If you could change anything, what would they be? What are your career aspirations? So really sort of getting to know the people. And then from that feedback, we could gather that and look at themes and trends and sort of see what's working really well. So, to feed that back to the leaders and say, hey, this is really good in your organization. Keep doing that. What's the challenges, so we can see again if there's any common themes on that, and again what's the sense of the engagement levels, etc. And from that we can then really roadmap what we need to focus on first, and throughout working with our clients, communication is so important, like updating the people on what we're doing and why, saying that you've given us this feedback, this is how we're addressing that, etc. And then we will sort of look at doing People Insights maybe annually. Within then throughout the year, we would look at doing surveys to get some feedback, and that may be on specific. So if we've rolled out a new initiative, so with one of our clients, we've just moved from annual performance reviews to quarterly because they want more in the moment sort of performance reviews. We will then send out some feedback around probably 2 cycles of that to say, hey, how's it all gone? Like, what worked really well? What are you enjoying about it? What could be different? So we're really then getting feedback on things that we've implemented. It might just be, how are we feeling right now in terms of our well-being? So we'll do some regular surveys. And then we will take that feedback and again feed that into our people plans and what we're working on, looking if we need to iterate or change anything within that. And then if we got some feedback that's sort of indicating that engagement might be dropping or that there's a particular challenge within the organization, we'll then do some listening forums where we'll bring people together and say, okay, the feedback's indicating this, let's talk about that, tell us why you're feeling those things. So I think it's not just one method of feedback. I think it's doing a variety of methods and just keeping that communication and the feedback loop continuously going.
Yeah, great. And I love the blended approach and the gaining insight at different time points in the project. It all makes a lot of sense. How do you avoid the trap that I think we've all fallen into at one stage in our HR careers of opening that black box of any and all feedback welcome, versus having to connect that feedback back to commercial outcomes rather than trying to make everyone happy?
Yeah, I think that's such a valid point, because I think, especially if we go into an organization where they haven't done feedback or aren't regularly doing feedback, you can, like you say, open that sort of Pandora's box of like, okay, tell us everything. And then they just were like, boom, and they overshare. I think that's one of the reasons why we do the People Insights as a starting point. I think it's to really understand, like when we start working with a client, how is everyone feeling? What are the sort of general themes around challenges, engagement levels, and giving that as our, right, get it all off your chest, get it all out, talk to us about everything. And then looking at obviously making sure that feedback's fed into the work that we're then delivering. Feedback obviously is really important, as I've just talked about, in terms of ongoing. But it's, I think, distinguishing between, like you say, feedback that's really valuable and that's going to help us to make improvements versus people potentially just having a little moan and opportunities to and it's important that people aren't happy, of course, that they tell us, but I think it's then about picking up where we're seeing that and drilling down further with those individuals. You're sharing this, you're not very happy, let's talk about that. What could potentially fix that? And you know what I say to my clients all the time? You can run your business ultimately, obviously within the parameters of the law, how you want, and in terms of the culture you want there. If you want it to be hybrid work, and if you want everybody in office, if you want to do structured performance management, if you want to have that more of an annual a quarterly review, that's all fine, but let's just be really open about that, because again, with a subscription model approach, we need to set out what they're subscribing to. We need to set those expectations. We need to let people know through that sort of recruitment process, this is how we do things around here. This is how we communicate. This is how we show up and how we want you to work in terms of hybrid or in the office. This is how we will measure performance. This is what your career progression could look like here. Because then people need to know what they're subscribing to. And we want them to know that before they subscribe to it, and then say, actually, this isn't what I want. This isn't what I feel I'm getting good value for. So I'm going to end my subscription, i.e. leave. Isn't it better that we just subscribe to something that they are fully aware of in the beginning? So that's another thing that I'll talk to my clients about. How do you want things to be done in your organization? How do you want people to show up? How are you going to reward and recognize? How are you going to ensure people get career progression if that's what they need and want? How are you going to do pay reviews? How are you going to look at well-being? And let's talk about those things openly again, so people know what they're subscribing to. And then let's make sure when we've got those people in who we've identified are the right fit and the right people for us, that we retain them, i.e. they keep subscribing by delivering on our promises, by understanding what they need and want. And as I said before, making sure that's all aligned to those changes as the business change and as people change as they go through their own life cycle.
Yes, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I talk often about the psychological contract that people make when they join an organization. I think something that I'm grappling with at the moment is that I think that the fundamental deal with work is changing a little bit. Progression's becoming less hierarchical. Your job description goes out the window pretty quickly. We're wearing multiple hats. We're being asked to adopt lots of technology. So it's not as easy anymore to make those promises. Are there any ways that you've been working with organizations to support that consistent change? Because that's I guess that's the recipe everybody's looking for at the moment. Kelly.
It is. And I think, and we'll touch on this probably a bit later, but when we are also looking at multi-generational workforces now, I think there's a real distinction between the generations and those coming into the workforce now who are okay with change, who expect change, want change, etc., versus when I started my working career, there was still that element of job for life, or, once you went into an organization, you were going to stick it out and you wouldn't dare move with less than 2 years service because it would look bad on your CV. And obviously we're seeing that all changing and that not being as key now. So I think it's understanding that for organizations that there will be a continual change. I think talking about that openly within your organization, things will change. I mean, I'm very open with that in HR Star with my team. I will sort of set out what the goals are for the year, what we want to achieve, but also very open that things change and we need to be adaptable and agile to keep up with the change and the pace of change as well. I think a lot of it goes back to communication, making sure that we are really communicating that with our people, letting them know if things change, why, how we're responding to that change. And I think, again, the feedback loops help with that. I think when we're treating the people experience like a product, we're shifting from something that's done and forgotten. So that one and done, we've done a handbook, we're done. We've done these policies, they're done. To we are continually looking at changing and updating these things as we all move through, our different life cycles, the employee life cycle, etc. So I think, again, it's that transparency around, hey guys, things are going to change and we've got to be okay with that, but we will keep you, updated of those changes. We'll talk to you about it. And also looking at things, within our wellbeing strategies, that people can come and talk about those things if they need to, if they do struggle with change or the pace of change, or they're not sure what that means for them, making sure that there's space and time to talk about those things with our people as well.
Yeah, I love that. It's almost stating up front in that psychological contract, you can expect change now. That, that is part of the deal. And so often I hear that over communication is the key to getting this whole change management piece right. Any change management piece, right, I suppose. And when you think you've communicated it enough, you probably haven't yet, and find every different way that you can communicate the same information in different formats over and over again. So I think it's a really good point.
When we do our people insights, when we go to an organization, I can guarantee 99% of the time the feedback we get is that we don't feel there's enough communication within our organization. And when you talk to leaders, you're like, people don't feel they're being communicated to. Like, oh, we do one-to-ones, or we do a quarterly update. But people want more than that. And they, like you say, they want it in various methods or on different platforms, etc. And so just over communicate. I don't think you can communicate too much. Do regular stand-ups, send out, emails, whatever your platform is, if it's Slack, etc. Do updates, and then there's nothing to communicate. So there'll always be something that you can tell your people. Even if it's like, we've had a great week, we've had a great month, or, we're getting ready for this now, or this, we won these clients, or this project's gone live. Like, there will always be something you can talk to your people about, or use the feedback that you've gathered. Guys, that we've this quarterly feedback looks like X, and we're going to be doing this with that feedback. So there'll be something you can communicate. And I think communication is still key within all organizations.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, there's a point that I want to make sure we touch on, and I know that time is flying by. You've mentioned multi-generational workforces a couple of times, and so I'm keen to loop back and I suppose ask you what you think organizations, like what shifts do you think organizations need to make to genuinely support multi-generational workforces?
I think it goes back to what I've already been talking about around really understanding the wants and needs of, the multi-generations that we are now working with and managing in our businesses. The expectations have changed. I think we had started to see that change pre-COVID. COVID definitely accelerated that. I think there's expectations now that we just wouldn't have seen years ago, or different generations in the workplace, around obviously more flexibility around where we work and how we work, and the fact that we're definitely seeing, I think, that move away from the 9 to 5. People want to work in different ways, and whether that be they want to do a chunk of their work first thing, be off, in a period of the day to go and do, go to the gym or childcare responsibilities, whatever those things might look like, and work, pick work up again later. People want more flexibility around work from anywhere, so they can combine like holidays with working, etc. So I think it's about really being open to listening to that, what our people are telling us, looking and thinking about how we can potentially adapt to that within our organizations. And it might not be something we can just do straight away. It might have to be something we gradually work towards, but it again will be something that will continually change. So when I'm working with our clients, it's around when we're gathering feedback, understanding from people what they want and need, and again seeing if that aligns to what you can deliver as a business. But I think now when we see people saying, I want some, our workers in the office 5 days a week, it's just seen as now so not the norm. Like, it's sort of, what do you mean? Why would you want people in your office 5 days a week? And I think what happened with COVID and all the change that's come since that, we used to talk about work-life balance. I think we now talk more about, well, I'm definitely talking more about this with my clients, is a blend. So there isn't that balance, because sometimes you'll be doing more work, sometimes you'll be doing more, personal stuff. But how are we blending both of those things now? I think because we haven't got that same structure around the 9 to 5 as we used to have, where we just log on at 9, log off at 5, and life happens outside of that. We are seeing more of a blend. And I think organizations are going to look at how we're enabling that for our people, because that's how we're going to attract and retain the best people, if we are able to flex and offer what this new generation coming into the workforce need and want to enable them to thrive in the workplace.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I actually think it's such an interesting time, right? Because we had so much flexibility during COVID, and it became almost an expectation. And now you are seeing a big shift towards back to office, but there haven't really been all that many reports come out yet on the study of how productive people are in moving back to the office. It's just an assumption that if we get everyone back in, everyone will start learning via osmosis again, and everything will be great. And so I'm almost interested to see what happens on the other side, because in the tech world as well, you've got this whole 966 piece around the a consistently working type culture. So I'm sure that you are also, looking forward to seeing what happens next in terms of that potential balance.
Definitely.
How the other side.
Hybrid, remote, in-office working debate will go on and on, because I think there are pros and cons, aren't there, for both of those. I think people do need to learn from peers and have some social interaction with other people and get out and about into the world. But I also know that having time to be able to just be at home and get your head down without distraction and work, and still be able to then do, some of your life chores as well, is really
get your washing done.
I know that if I'm out and about with work all week, I have no idea what's in my fridge. My washer basket's overflowing. I don't really know where my kids are. And it feels chaotic, versus when I have some of those, a couple of days at home, I can make sure that the washer's done, that there is food, and etc. And I feel that then, I feel better as a mother and as a human being. So I think there's pros and cons of both. There's obviously certain industries or roles that you can't do from home, etc. But again, I think it's about really understanding what is needed from that role, and then how and what you need from people to deliver that, and see if you're matching that up with what they need and want as well. But I think it would be something that just continually changes as well. But yeah, you're right. We definitely have seen more and more people shifting back to asking people to come into the office. I'm not seeing many people saying that has to be 5 days a week, but definitely a bit more structure around, okay, 2 to 3 days a week, we need you in the office, or we need you in the office for certain things, like for collaboration days, for certain meetings, for your, quarterly or annually reviews, etc. But when you're doing deep focus work, you can work from home. So again, I think, like you say, COVID excelled that flexibility around, okay, we have to change the way we're working. And I think because it wasn't, we just had to do it overnight, didn't we? And now I think, again, it's that feedback thing, isn't it? Like, let's look at what's worked through that, what hasn't, and then how are we then improving our processes or the way we're working off the back of that feedback.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to have to wrap things up. Time has flown by, and I do want to ask you one finishing question. Okay. Today. So I'll go big because I like to end on with a big impact question. So if you could fix one thing in HR tomorrow, what would it be?
We've definitely seen progression in this. So when I started, as I said, in HR was very much seen as a function to hire and fire, didn't make money, etc. It's a support function. We have definitely seen a shift, and obviously people more and more now understanding that it is more business essential. But I think I would like to see that move on even more. For the clients that we work with who really invest in us to help them invest in their people, they are seeing great things happen. We've helped a client achieve best place to work on the Times top 100 list. Their engagement scores rise, which therefore has meant that their sort of performance issues have dropped, their churn has dropped, and their businesses have thrived because of that. We have actually, have the data to show that. I just wish that that was just more as a given, that people, you know, and this is me generalizing, lots of people I do understand the importance of it, but that it isn't just something, you know, that you might want to do or should do. Like, it's essential if you want your business to thrive, that you are investing in your people, and that is a continual process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And what an impactful note to end on. Thank you so much for your time today, Kelly. The conversation's been fascinating. And yeah, I really appreciate how much you advocate for the HR space. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Liz. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.